Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series one book at a time. Right now we are on dun 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 The Year of the Dresden. And we are covering chapters 1 through 13 of Jim Butcher's Grave Peril. Is it about ghosts? Is it about vampires? Is it about zombies?
It's about everything, honestly.
It's about everything, yeah.
I was assuming Grave. I was like, he's going to hit it right on the nose with zombies. But you know what? Vampires are here, and so are ghosts, and it's all happening.
It's all
werewolves,
just happening.
Loop Carews, they're back in the mix.
I love when he corrected someone where they were like, oh, well, werewolves. And he's like, Loop Guru.
Yeah, it was Susan. And he yells at her and he's like, Loop Carews. Like, how dare you not say Loop Guru?
Look, 24-year-old girlfriend of mine who I have commitment issues with, get the name right.
Have some respect on the name. It's Loop Guru.
All right, but before we get into the Loop Guru of it all, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
You know, I haven't been reading very much of anything. I haven't been feeling too well, so honestly, most things have kind of taken the back burner. I haven't been feeling well, and I've just been busy, and it seems like everything's just happening right now. I know it's summer, and everyone's like, oh, there's all this extra time because daylight. And it's like, okay, well then why don't I have enough time in a day? But I feel like I've just kind of been giving myself some space rather than forcing myself into books, because usually when I force myself to read something, I hate it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that. Like, I have been having a really good reading year so far, and I don't want to force myself into reading a book and then not enjoy it or give it the credit it deserves, because that's not fair to somebody's work that they put a lot of time into either.
I agree.
But I have been watching a couple things. I finished off Bridgerton.
I did not.
Okay. I won't say much until you get caught up on it. Besides just, this was not my favorite season.
I think they shoved too much into it from what I've seen from reactions of it.
Yep. There was too much. And it was like, everybody keeps complaining. And I agree with this complaint that there was not enough Penelope and Colin.
Yeah.
I get it that they're trying to squeeze in some other stuff now, probably because they're like, uh-oh, we're running out of time. And I get that as well. But also, it just really seemed to kind of take away from them as a couple if this was going to be their season, quote unquote.
Also,
and I would have liked to see more of them. Like, sorry, Kate and Anthony, get out of here. You're done. We already heard about you. We don't need you to be in here and like randomly smiling and happy. We don't want your happiness on screen.
I don't really. Yeah, they did them dirty this season. Where like last season they were like,
the dialogue was weird too. Like,
yeah, like I haven't finished it yet, so like, but I haven't liked it so far. And I will say that
you won't like it in the second half.
Some spoilers, guys. You do see Penelope lose her virginity,
and immediately get pregnant.
Oh, really? Oh no, yes. I didn't know. Okay, well,
I'm sorry for that major spoiler, but
no, that's fine.
That was somewhat, I shouldn't say somewhat, that was extremely frustrating to me, honestly, because I was just like, are you freaking kidding me?
I hate that so much.
I hate that trope. Absolutely hate that trope.
Also, like when she was losing her virginity, I told my sister-in-law, because I thought this was true. I thought they did it in complete silence, because I was like, this is the most awkward thing I've ever watched. And in my mind, it was in silence. And the thing was I re-listened to it afterwards, and like the other themes in previous seasons have been like hot and steamy, and this one had like low soft music playing, and I was like, I didn't need this. Like, this is supposed to be passionate, and it's supposed to be
like him trying to like teach. He's a teacher for her, and I'm like, I don't dig that too much either. But
I also will say that like in what I've seen so far, and like this is obviously a sensitive topic for me as a plus size person who's never going to be the skinniest rail thin person ever. Like, at my skinniest, I have curves and everything. A lot of Eloise's personality, I think, boils down to the way she treats Penelope. She treats her as like the fat, funny friend who is not supposed to have a personality outside of what she does for Eloise. And they try to fix that sometimes with how she treats the other friend in this season that Eloise has. But most of the time, she treats the other one as on the same level as her. And she often treats Penelope like she is beneath her.
Less than.
And I saw this the most that I got frustrated and I paused
And
it and
it's
I ranted.
extremely annoying because it's like Penelope is extremely smart and a better writer and all these things that we
Hmm.
know about her, a business person. Like,
She's very
okay.
successful. And the way Eloise speaks to her and speaks about her, like even
She's
with
very
her,
condescending and jealous.
even when she like came at her about Colin and she was like, "You are in love with my brother." And I'm like, who didn't see that? It's because
How
you
did she
didn't.
not know? It's because you're so self-absorbed, Eloise.
Right. And so I was just like, no, I'm not on her side at all. And I do not like the way she treats Penelope. And like, as someone who's been treated like that, like I once had a friend say to my face, like, I knew that person wasn't going to be the end all be all for you because there was no way you'd get married before I did. Like, that is something a friend has said to me
Oh my
before
gosh.
with a straight face. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, and so that's I've been on the receiving end of that, of like friends who don't think I'm like what sexually viable because I wasn't as thin as they were. And like I understand we grew up in the early 2000s, but like I know what it feels like. And I also know what it feels like to have friends who are supportive and do find you like, oh, you are a full-fledged person. And Eloise does not think Penelope is a full-fledged person.
No. I'll also say though, like branch off of this discussion that there was all this talk about how this was going to be such a great season. We're going to have all these sexy moments with a curvy woman as the lead. We do not get more than one.
No.
Like
Oh,
and I was like, I thought we were supposed to be getting this like scandalous
right.
amount of sex in this. And okay, you know what? I have talked many times on the show about like how I
Your
have a sex
threshold.
threshold,
Yes.
not even close to being reached in this season because they, I don't know what their marketing, what they were thinking. Who were they talking about season one still? Because
I
we're
don't.
nowhere close to the
Well,
amount of
and I think
sexual
like
stuff going
they've kind
on.
of shown that the showrunner didn't really understand Penelope at all this season. Not Shonda
No,
Rhimes, but the other one. She obviously did not understand Penelope as a character. And I will also say that, like, I know one spoiler, and this is a show that obviously caters a lot to white women. And a lot of them came out of the woodwork as huge homophobes. So don't do that. This is Pride Month. Let's let
let
people.
me clear this up a little. So, and I can speak a little on this as a white woman who also deals with infertility because this is the group that came out was all pissed about it. So in the books, apparently there is a storyline. I'm spoiling all of Bridgerton, people, so tap out now if
We will
you're
have it in the show notes. Like, skip this
avoiding
part.
Bridgerton spoilers.
Yeah.
Okay, tap out now. But apparently in the books, Francesca is someone who ends up marrying the Kilmartin guy or whoever his equivalent is in the books.
Hmm.
He dies somehow, and
Yes.
Francesca enters into another relationship with a Michael Sterling.
Hmm.
And when she is in a relationship with Michael Sterling, she deals with infertility. Okay, so at the end of Bridgerton season 3, that just completed, we're introduced to a Michaela Sterling, who we know is being like the setup for Francesca for her future love interest.
Okay.
And this has frustrated a lot of people because, and I will say majority white women, they're upset because also racism,
Yeah.
but and homophobia, but they're upset because they feel that the infertility storyline is going to be thrown out the window. We don't know that at this point. We don't
Right.
know that this infertility storyline is going to be thrown out the window. Yes, I would love to see representation, good representation
Good
of
representation.
infertility on screen. Something like Bridgerton that has a huge audience could do that.
Right.
And we don't know that they're throwing this out. Also, women who are queer can experience infertility, so slow your roll, people. Don't freak out
Right.
just yet because we don't know what the plan is in store for the writing and the plot going into Francesca's storyline. So the way that people are freaking out about this is because we are introduced to this Michaela Sterling, who is going to be Francesca's love interest. She is a black woman,
Hmm.
and this has a lot of people upset because they're saying it's because they are worried that the infertility storyline is going to be thrown out. And to that, I just say women who are queer can experience infertility,
Right.
and we don't know that they're going to throw this storyline out. So
Also, I guess my,
calm down with your quote unquote critique on this.
yeah.
And also, I question whether or not Bridgerton is the best place to have this type of storyline, because we are set back in time. We don't have the medical interventions that we are able to have now. And I feel like a lot of what we would see in terms of a storyline dealing with infertility in this time period is going to be very much a, oh, look, they relaxed and now they have a
Yes.
baby. So,
That is
and that is
also
harmful. So
yes. That's my thing
maybe
is like I
maybe
think
let's
a lot
calm down.
of
Like, I don't think that Bridgerton is maybe the best place for an infertility storyline, even though I think that it would be great if we got more of those. I'm not that bothered by them either removing that or, having a queer woman experience infertility, because that exists.
right.
That exists. And also just I don't know if they'll be able to wrap it up in a way that feels fulfilling to people who are going through this and dealing with all the treatments and medications and the endless amount of grief and guilt that often is tied into infertility.
Right.
That because
Well,
um,
also
a miraculous pregnancy in Bridgerton is not going to feel satisfying to me, and
no.
it's honestly just going to piss me off a
Well,
little
that's you and I have
bit.
talked about this before where like people like to deal, quote unquote, deal with infertility in TV shows, but it is always with a very specific bow, happy ending. You
Oh yeah,
relaxed and now you're pregnant.
yeah,
And it doesn't often go down the road of like some people still are not able to get pregnant even if they
yes.
wanted to and it was the thing they wanted most in the world. And
Mhm.
we often don't get those stories.
And
One
we
of the
also never get secondary infertility. We never get the different experiences of infertility. It's reduced to a single layer where there's a white man and woman who want to have a baby. And
mm-hmm,
what do? They relax and they do. They
mm-hmm,
have it. And we don't ever get this experience of like people who create families in different ways. There's very rarely do we see like TV shows that highlight surrogacy or IVF
mm-hmm.
or adoption well.
Yes. I will say,
I will
one
say
of the
well.
few that I remember, and still harmful in many different ways because it doesn't really look into adoption versus, childbirth. Like adoption is not always an alternative to childbirth, all
No,
those things, and
nope.
we can caveat those. But one I do remember seeing that was very interesting until they kind of ruined it in the movies was Sex and the City.
Yeah, you've mentioned this
Because
before.
yeah, because Charlotte struggled with infertility, and at the end of the series, never was able to carry a pregnancy to term and ended up adopting. And that was a very unique situation that I said was that I think was ahead of its time for what it
Mhm.
was, where
Sure.
um we also like I thought it did a really good job with showing like one of her friends gets pregnant accidentally and she has a hard time supporting the friend and it's okay. Like it's a very like no one
Sure.
shames her for not being okay with it at the
Mhm.
time. And when she like gets excited for the friend to have the pregnancy, it's on her own terms and they
Yep.
like talk through and there was like a very beautiful moment that I thought was really well done in Sex and the City where she runs into the friend. The friend is thinking about terminating the pregnancy. And she says, like, I'm really mad at you. I just can't look at you right now. I just can't talk to you right now. Like, I'm so frustrated. And she goes, okay, well, I'm really worried about you getting home. So I'm just going to walk a couple feet behind you. And she goes, you don't need to do that. And then she walks and you see the friend following her home, making sure
Yeah.
she gets home okay. And I'm like, that's actually really lovely. And it shows like friendship at like its purest form and shows like
Mhm.
the struggles that happen and like during
I
the
I
show.
like that
Yeah.
specific portrayal. I haven't seen it, but I like what you're saying about that because I do think that there aren't enough shows that actually like deal with like I know like that is something that I can relate to personally, like hearing other people like every when you're dealing with infertility, everyone around you
Hmm.
is having a baby. Like there's no way to avoid it. Like
Yep.
everyone's having one and it's happening like boom, boom, boom. They're having their second, third, fourth. It's just
Hmm.
they're popping out of the woodwork. There's
Yep.
kids everywhere. You notice them all the time. Like it's
Yeah.
impossible to avoid pregnant people. And when you find out about like people who are close to you that are dealing with these emotions, like dealing with these things, are becoming pregnant, you
Yeah.
deal with emotions that are very complicated because
Yes.
it's not that you don't feel happy for them,
Right.
it's that you feel so much shame and grief for yourself
Hmm.
and the situation that you are in that it's difficult to show support in
Yes.
that moment as you're working through. And I also think I have also dealt with situations where people have, like had situations where they've put a child up for adoption or
Mhm.
they have terminated pregnancy or whatever. And when you're dealing with infertility, it does seem like a slap in the face,
Yeah.
honestly, to see people become pregnant so easily and then be able to make these decisions when things feel so out of your hands.
Right.
Like you don't have control over your own situation, but you get to watch everyone else be able to completely control their
Right.
situation where they can not only just decide, you know what, I think I want to have a baby this year, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then if they don't want to have a baby this year, they don't have to because they
Right.
have control.
Yeah.
So I do like that they're portraying the complicated emotions that go into that. And I think that that's a show that's equipped to do that because it's in a modern setting
Yes.
also. And I just don't know if Bridgerton is going to be able to do this well. And I don't feel that it's going to be satisfying to people. Like, I know that there's a lot of women who love Bridgerton, especially women dealing with infertility who love Bridgerton and would love to see something like this on screen. I think we need to reflect, like, is this going to be the representation we want? Or is this going to be something that makes us feel even more hollow when
Right.
we watch it because they're not going to do it well? Because I know if I go and watch a season 4 and Francesca deals with infertility for 2 weeks and then becomes pregnant, I'm going to be like, well, great. Good for
Right.
you, Francesca.
Exactly.
I'm glad that you, cried twice in a scene and then you got pregnant because you relaxed.
Right.
So it's just not going to feel right.
And also just like, I don't know. I also like make sure people who have that criticism are actually having that criticism and aren't using it as a shield. Because I also know sometimes people feel icky about something and it's about
Mhm.
sexuality and it's not about infertility storyline, but it's
Yes.
easier to say this
It's
is about the
yes.
infertility storyline. And
Well,
so,
and that's why
yeah,
that's why I mentioned that when people are saying, "Well, I'm so upset that we're not getting this infertility storyline," that's why I wanted to mention queer people can also experience
right.
infertility. Let's not discount this fact because it
Yep.
is a fact. So
Yes.
I'm not discounting this. I'm just questioning whether or not Bridgerton is the best place to handle this type of storyline. I think people need to take a look in the mirror and be like, no, this isn't the best place. And
It's Bridgerton. This
no,
is a show that has Penelope being almost killed by a balloon moving at a
a slow
glacial
moving
pace.
balloon.
Yeah.
Like, this is definitely not going to handle infertility well. Who am
No.
I kidding? Like, come on, be real, people.
I mean,
Like,
there's,
no.
and again, like, if people haven't watched
And
the show, like, there is a marital rape scene in season one with our
yeah,
protagonist. And
well, and it sounds
yeah,
like the show improves upon some of the issues that the books have because it sounds like the books are even a little more problematic. I cannot say for sure, but I
for
have seen some critiques online where people are like, wow, this is terrible. I was not expecting this. I read the book because I liked the show, and this was worse than I thought.
yes.
And that's doesn't bode well. And it also makes me question like Francesca's storyline too. Like, what was it about this that spoke to people? I, I don't
Yeah.
know. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where it's like,
Yes.
because I'm like, again, being in that time period, what were the interventions that they could take as far as fertility treatments? I'm unsure.
And I also
And
think
it also
sometimes
just kind of seems like it's almost coded a little bit like, oh, just relax and see if you can just be happy in your relationship and then a baby will come by
in
divine
its own
intervention.
time. And you have their mom in the background being like, you never put yourself first. And it's like, dude,
You never put yourself first,
we
Francesca. It's like she's playing the piano all the freaking time. She does tons of self-care.
weren't you the one who was like, she needs to get everyone in the room and just have the same speech all together?
She does
Like,
it all the time.
it's the same speech over and over again.
Oh,
You you're so caring about everyone else. It's like you can't think that about all your children. One of your children you have
you
to look
just
at and be like, that's a
need to
real
have a love match
self-centered.
like me and your father.
Oh
Like,
my
what?
God.
You guys were a love match? Like, okay, we get it. All of
Yeah.
the Bridgertons will have love matches.
I mean,
Cool.
In the books, it sounds like not everyone did at first, though, because like certain ones they had, like even the Kate and Anthony in the books, they get caught with him like trying to suck a bee sting out of her, and they have to get married. So that
But
happened.
it becomes a love match.
But it becomes, but then it gets retrograded into like, well, now we love each other, so we were horny for each other.
Yeah.
That's the same thing,
Okay.
right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
So, moral of the story, Bridgerton, not the greatest space for an infertility storyline. So suck it up. Michaela Sterling is pretty, and that looks like an awesome
and
addition
honestly,
to
those
a
two
story that's
women,
trying to increase diversity, and good for them.
and also like, I don't know, teach straight people that like you,
That the world's not about us. Like,
not
come
even that,
on.
but like I feel like straight people think like if I watch two women like each other and I feel titillated by it, what does that mean? I'm like, it means that people are human and we like being titillated by sexy scenes.
Yay.
Like,
Oh, what?
like, lots of people watch Brokeback Mountain, guys,
Yeah.
and they liked some of those scenes. So, I don't know what else to tell you. It's okay, I promise.
Yeah. Well,
So,
that
yeah.
was a rant and a half. I didn't know we were going to go down that road,
No,
but
it's
thanks for
okay.
bringing it up.
No,
Apologies,
I'm
listeners, for bringing out the rage in me.
I think it's important to hear that. Like, I think it's very important to hear because I think a lot of people, and not to discount anyone's journey, this is not what I'm
Mhm.
doing, but like a lot of people don't hear about like actual infertility journeys. They always hear
Sure,
about it
sure.
after the fact,
Yeah.
typically
Well,
after
and
someone,
there's a
yeah,
lot of, like I said, there's a lot of shame in
yes.
regards to sharing your story that we don't talk about these situations enough as far as infertility and miscarriages and
Hmm.
secondary infertility and a, a lot of women, people with uteruses, do not share their
Yes.
experience because they feel shameful because there's something inherent about your body that doesn't work.
Hmm.
So you feel like you're not meeting the standard that your body is supposed to just naturally be able to do. And
Right.
we haven't socially gotten like to a point where it's talked about frequently or that people understand
Right.
the complexities physically and emotionally that people go through.
Hmm. Agree. So thank you for
So,
sharing.
yeah, no problem. I have lots to say about that, but I won't do it now because I'm gonna for another time.
For
For
another time when
for
we do our
another
TV Tuesday.
time, listeners. Yes. On Bridgerton season 4, and Laura screams the entire time and beats her head against a wall.
Laura says, gives a show note at the
Stay
beginning, like
tuned
she does, where she says, "Hey guys, this is Laura from the future, and I will not be participating in this episode because I was worried about how I would act. So enjoy,
because I have
Hannah."
a head injury.
From chucking it at the wall.
Oh my. But Hannah, I have also watched another show that was recommended to me by my cousin. And I
Yes.
was talking to him the other day and I was like, I've just been having a really hard time getting into shows recently. And there's been nothing that's really like hitting. I've just been like rewatching Kim's Convenience so much to the point where it's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I've binged this 4 times and I just don't know if I can hear any more of Sang Il's jokes. Like, I don't know if I can do it. Mr. Mehta, I love you also. I don't know if I can handle any more of your jokes. But
I would never call you Uppa. That Uppa means
I
daddy.
I love the moment in that though. Like there's a moment where he is trying to figure out why Raj called off the wedding and uh Janet speaks to her mom and says Naya, which means it's me in Korean, but
Yeah.
she's the other woman. And
Hmm.
Mr. Mehta is like, did you say Naya? I know 3. I'll set Mrs. Mehta on the trail. I can't remember what it is. She's like a shark after the
Yeah.
corpse of a dead seal or something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
So
He
funny.
needs his own show. So,
Yes.
so bad. Oh man, I love him. But the show that my cousin recommended to me, none of the feel good stuff that's happening in Kim's
No.
Convenience. I'm talking about The Boys on Amazon
Yeah.
Prime. This is a superhero show that was based off a comic,
Hmm.
and I have not read the comic. I don't know that I will because I
I
don't
think
need
you're
that.
fine. Yeah,
I
I
don't need
think you're
that
fine.
background, honestly.
Yeah.
And they're probably changing things from
Yeah.
the comic to adapt for the TV show, which is fine.
Yeah.
So I've watched 2.5 seasons and already because I just
Oh,
started watching and
wow.
I just could not stop.
You
And
have surpassed me, honestly, at this.
I
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna finish up all of the episodes that are out, I would assume soon, because
Yeah.
I kind of became obsessed with this show. And there were like this is a really dark show, and it's imagining a world where these superpowered beings, which they refer to as soups, live amongst us, and
Hmm.
a corporation called Vought has taken in some of the most marketable of these superpowered people and made them part of the Seven, who are
Hmm.
supposed to be, the saving the world, quote unquote. But we find out that this is a corporation who has bad interests. Obviously, they are
I mean, they're
just
money making.
they're financially motivated. It's a
Yeah.
pharmaceutical company, and they use the Seven as kind of a marketing strategy and a way to just kind of make themselves look good when they also have these nefarious things going on behind
Hmm.
the scenes. And they also just, as you would expect a corporation to, they have political ties and they have a lot of control over things that are happening around the world, honestly.
Yeah.
And in opposition to the Seven, who are not the Seven necessarily, but in opposition to Vought International, we have this group of people called the Boys, who are vigilantes who initially kind of grouped together because they've all been wronged by different members of the Seven, different soups, and most of them have had situations happen to them where like a loved one has been harmed by a superpowered person, part of the Seven, and has not received any kind of reconciliation or apology in like regard to why they were wrong. It was just kind of like written off like, oh, we're trying to save the world, so you should be thankful even though your family died. Like,
Well,
okay.
it's kind of going into like the realities of if you had superheroes, because everyone talks about how like, well, the Avengers come in to save quote unquote everyone, and many people die, and who is responsible for that? And a lot
Mhm.
of times we cloak things in comic books behind the like, well, they're
Yeah.
working for the greater good, so everyone else is going to die anyway. So the people they save, it was for the benefit of everyone.
Yes.
And this show
But
takes a
this
darker look at like,
questions like, but
yeah,
what happens
right.
if we have this happen? And we also have like a main storyline is that they're trying to get members of like the soups into the military.
Yes.
And they want to imagine that. And then there's drastic measures that are taken that certain people in the Seven go and try to take things into their own hands to
Hmm.
make some of these political things happen. And it ends up being a cluster.
Yeah.
And so it's honestly, I find it very interesting in terms of like the social commentary. I also think that the acting is really good. Like
Yeah.
I I think that the two main actors who are Anthony Starr, who plays Homelander, who
Hmm.
is kind of a reimagined Superman of sorts, and
Yes.
he's supposed to be like the most powerful soup that we
Hmm.
have in the world. He is a terrifying individual,
Yes.
and he plays this role so well. And he's given so many speeches to give that are
Hmm.
comical to me because they so perfectly reflect speeches that you will hear figureheads for X, Y, or Z group give today.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious to see these things delivered and how things kind of become twisted and more manipulated as we go along and the moment changes and the motivations change,
Hmm.
and how this actor is able to portray I don't know if we call Homelander a sociopath or a psychopath. I'm unsure.
Yeah, I forget the differences.
I
And I
want to say
mean,
he's a sociopath because he cares about himself and like two other people. I I want to say sociopath, but also just like the delivery and the way that he is so unstable is fantastically acted. There's so many people that I have seen for weeks be like, give this man his Emmy now. And I'm like, okay, well, now I get it. I guess
yeah.
I understand why people want him to have an Emmy. And it's not because, well, maybe there are people who like this character disturbing, if you do, but
So that
because
is a big
well,
joke
and
that's been going around on the
yes,
internet right now
and
that
that was honestly another reason that interested me in this show because the fourth season is currently releasing episodes like one by one, and people are
Mhm.
like saying that, oh, wait a minute, this show is making fun of us. Like, we had no idea. And
I don't know who
yeah,
watched Homelander and they were like, he is without a doubt amazing. Like it's the same people we were talking
he's
about who like
terrifying.
he's terrifying, he is scary, and like I, I don't understand people who find many redeeming qualities in him
No,
because his obsession is with people who reflect something back about himself to him. Like that's it.
the only
So
thing that I will say in terms of Homelander, and this is true of a lot of the seven that we get to see, is that they are dealing with an unspeakable amount of trauma.
yes.
Like, absolutely ridiculous. Homelander specifically, we learned that he grew up isolated from other people. He was abused in multiple ways and
Mhm.
taught to become this specific version of an American hero. And the way that that has shaped him and the need that he has to be loved by everyone is it's killing him, really.
Yeah.
Like, that's honestly one of his main weaknesses is his desire to be loved and to not understand how to attain that love from others
Hmm.
because he wasn't ever taught that. He wasn't taught emotions. He's only taught how to keep people who are less powerful than him down.
Yeah.
It's very well portrayed, I think. And I think that the only redemptive thing that we know about him is that he has had a terrible life. And that's
Yes.
not excusing anything that he does. Like, he is extremely awful, like terrifying, awful, disgusting things happen that he makes happen. And
Yes.
he is abusive and manipulative and harmful, harmful, harmful person who is very disgusting at times. And so I'm not excusing anything that he does. I think that it's worked into the story well that he is dealing with so much trauma
Well, and it goes back
to
to
explain his character a little more.
a conversation you and I had over on our Patreon, join our Patreon, media literacy, where some people do not
Mm-hmm.
seem to understand undertones and complex
Mm-hmm.
characters, where we can disagree with how a person is motivated and how a person acts in the real world while understanding that there are reasons that they came to be that way. And it doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
we agree with them or we think that they are an okay character, but it means that we
Right.
can actively sympathize with a character who has gone through those things or at least have some kind of
Mm-hmm.
sympathy for them.
Right.
Other people who have put him up on a pedestal, though, like, no.
They don't understand. I feel
Yeah.
like there's so many people, mostly men,
Yeah.
honestly.
Oh, yeah.
There's a specific episode I'm thinking of that I don't know how people thought this was not like a political commentary on a certain group of people when they specifically highlight the radicalization of white men in
Hmm.
the United States in an episode, and it's devastating to watch this play out because they show how, like, continued like exposure to this kind of rhetoric can radicalize someone
Hmm.
against other groups of people, and it does play out. And then we hear our typical thoughts and prayers go out to
Hmm.
the family, but here's the problem, and they immediately like blow it off.
Yeah.
But so that's why it's baffling that people kind of think that, oh, this was never this was about this, it was never about this, right? It
Right.
was always about this. And kind of the people that I have seen kind of upholding Homelander seem to be white men, which
Yeah.
let's
And I mean, they
be.
have some critiques for like white women as well, or people
Hmm.
who are, misogynistic or
Hmm.
racist in different ways. Like
Yeah.
I think the show doesn't have a lot of grace for many types of people, but it's different in like what motivations are versus
Yeah.
like when people are self-serving, I think is their
Hmm.
biggest critique of
And you
things.
know what? I think that even the heroes are more of anti-heroes than anything in this
Oh yeah.
because they're extremely flawed people. And that kind of gets me into the other character that I love that I think is extremely well done, which is our opposite of Homelander, his main nemesis of sorts is Billy Butcher, who's played by
Yes.
the extremely sexy Carl Urban.
He's a very
And
good looking man.
all of his delivery of lines, like, oh my gosh, and sometimes he'll like crack a little like half smile. I'm like, uh, I
Hmm.
lost my stomach's gone. What happened to it? It dropped out of my body because he's like, so attractive. Like, oh, his line delivery is excellent. He knows how to just drop something humorous into like a very dark moment, and his just perfect delivery, honestly. But he also does a great job of showing the rage and
Hmm.
distrust that
Yeah.
people can develop when they are put through certain situations.
Yeah.
And he keeps this below a certain level until it's brought out of him. And
Hmm.
I love seeing Carl Urban portray that. It's a fantastic character and just really interesting to see his story play out and the ways that he not only can help people, but also harm a lot of people.
Yeah.
But he somehow has this ability to rally others around him. But at the same time, even though they rally around him and they think that he's the only one that can help them, and he often does, he's
Yeah.
often the person that gets them out of bad situations. He is also very harmful in things that he does or says and takes a lot of missteps. And so I think he is also just a really interesting and a powerful character, really,
Yeah.
in terms of this show. Those two main characters just really stand out to me. But I think that a lot of the commentary on like the way that women are portrayed in media and the way that women are expected to act in certain standpoints and like in certain settings is very accurate, and the ways that people are portrayed is
Hmm.
extremely accurate. Like I think a lot of what the show does is done fairly well.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting show.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I
So,
don't know if it's my favorite show. I would never say it's a favorite show. It's very dark and deals with a lot of heavy things.
yeah, I had to stop watching because I was watching around the time that it actually came out. So I was watching in 2019 and 2020. And I
Mhm.
remember, or I forget when the second season came out because it's always weird during pandemic era of when things actually came out. So
Sure.
yeah, so it did come out in 2020. And I was like, it was during the last election. And I remember being like,
Mhm.
I physically can't handle watching this anymore.
Sure. Like, I don't think I
And-
could have watched this during that time.
yeah.
Like
And
I'm
so
in a better headspace now than probably at that time as well, and I don't think I could have watched all of this then.
exactly. And so I remember like that's like, oh yeah, that was when I was watching it. That's why I stopped. And so I've never
Sure.
come back to it since like I watched the first two episodes of season two, I think, and I was like, I physically
Mhm.
cannot watch this anymore. And so I just
Sure.
stopped. But I have watched it. I agree, it's not like a favorite show, but it's a
No, but
good
it's an
show.
interesting show, and I
Yeah.
think props to the writers for not really pulling any punches, and also to the actors for great performances.
Yeah.
Because
Agreed.
there are a lot of great performances that occur, not just Carl Urban and Anthony Starr, but there are some other really great actors like Queen Maeve, who
Yeah.
is a superhero, does an excellent job. Dominique McElliott
Yes.
is the actress. Excellent job of portraying kind of this person who has been a member of this superhero crew for such a long time and is just kind of burnt out
Hmm.
and once had good intentions, but is just kind of been through the ringer and is just over it,
Yeah.
honestly. So very well done portrayal. Yeah, a lot of it is just really good acting, I think. And they
Yes.
kind of hit the mark in terms of finding the right people to play certain parts. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of times that's rare that
Yes.
we are able to find actors who are able to portray certain things so well. I will say though, like people, I've been seeing Jack Quaid a lot of places. Like he's okay.
I
Nepo baby, good job for you, I guess that
I've
you
heard he
got
is a
in.
very nice Nepo baby.
I mean,
And
he
I
seems
do,
nice. He does an okay job of being like the like kind of
He does exactly what
nerdy
he's supposed
guy
to.
that's
Yeah.
in this that's like, I'm gonna be tough too. And it's like, okay, well, Carl
Oh,
Urban just
he's
used a crowbar to like beat somebody up, but
I think
you do
he
you.
has a very specific niche of like I'm the straight man of these things, but a little
Yeah,
bit
like
bumbling.
I'm the moral authority here. Like, okay.
Because I also like I've watched him in Plus One,
Hmm.
which is a great rom-com. It's really good. I highly recommend. And I also know that I've heard a lot of good things about one of his coworkers who works with him on Star Trek Lower Decks, who says
Oh,
like
okay.
he's wonderful to work with, and voice casting, and he's like the sweetest man alive. And so that's good. And like I've seen
Well, that's
different,
good. I'm not saying
yeah,
anything about him
no, no, no.
personally. This is more just like a comment on his acting where I'm like, are people really thinking he does that great of a job? I don't know. This could have been
Yeah.
another guy and I was just questioning like, is this just the Nepo baby getting a
I think
role?
it's just a Nepo
Probably,
baby
but
getting a role.
he if he's also nice, that's good. Like I'm all for people being nice, even if they are the son of Meg Ryan
Yeah. And
and Dennis
Dennis
Quaid.
Quaid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also love if you ever want to watch him, like just weird moments when you're like, oh yeah, it must be weird to have a celebrity for a parent. He does like an interview where he talks about watching when Harry met Sally for the first time, and people were like, was
Oh,
that
geez.
awkward for you? And he was like, honestly, I was just like so nice to see my mom like doing her job well. Like, isn't that amazing that she's that good of an actress? Like, she is such a good actress. It's so
Oh
amazing to watch. And I'm
no.
like, well, that's a very sweet way to say that. And I also did love him in the Scream franchise. Good job
Okay,
in the
I didn't
Scream
know he
franchise.
was in that many things, honestly, because the only thing I recognized him from was like, oh, was this the dude that had a minor role in the Hunger Games? Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I really liked it. He's been in quite a bit. He's been working consistently, I think, since like 2012. But yeah, he The Boys is like one of his bigger runs, but he was in Star Trek Lower Decks, which I know him
Yeah, I
from.
think this is probably one of his more prominent roles.
Yeah. And then I really liked the Plus One. I just really like that movie. It's a good movie. And I really like the Scream franchise. If anyone who knows me, I
Sure.
love Scream. So
I'll
yeah.
also just mention though that Giancarlo Esposito plays like the head of the Vought International Corporation in this. And why is this man always cast as a villain? Like, can he not be a villain for once? What are his other roles? Because I'm sure he
Look.
has an extensive filmography.
Oh,
What are
he
some
has
of his roles where he's a nice guy? I would like to see them because I'm
um
like, why? Of course he's always a villain. Even on Community, they made this guy a villain. Oh,
yeah, he does not have many ones where he is a nice person. I think he was a good guy in Unpregnant, but I can't remember.
I don't know. He's always like the bad guy, and he does it well because he's got like a very
Yeah.
sinister delivery to his lines and everything. But
Yeah.
I just kind of wonder, like, does he also be nice ever in an
Eh,
acting role? Like,
I
I'm sure
mean,
he's a nice person in real life, but like, what's with all the bad guy roles that he plays? Because he's always a bad guy.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but I do feel like
Because I'm looking
he
at all these different things he's been in. I'm like, yeah, he's a bad guy, and that bad guy, and that bad guy, and that.
I think he was a good guy in Unpregnant. I think he was just a nice man who
Okay,
drove two girls, so one of them could get an abortion.
that might be the only one that at this point where Giancarlo is nice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he is a supervillain. If you see him show up in something, chances are he's bad.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair. You just gotta. Oh, he's an he's an anti-government survivalist who also, I
and
believe, drives a limo.
oh, okay.
Uh, but yeah,
But moral of the story, The Boys is a very interesting show, and Carl Urban is hot.
fair enough. Fair
Hannah,
enough.
what have you been reading and watching?
So I haven't been really watching that much. I have been still rewatching House when I fall asleep, and I watched the first episode of ER recently, and I
I
very
have
much
never watched ER.
so I remember watching it during a very specific era. Like, did you ever watch a TV show and you realize, like, out of context of the time you were watching, like, you were watching the couple that wasn't meant to be? Like, and you thought they were
Hmm.
great, but everyone else hated them because you didn't
No.
see any of the other context. So, like, ER was on long enough that I remember watching at a specific point when two characters were together. And then later I found out you weren't supposed to be rooting for them the entire time because she was in love with another person. And I was like,
Ooh.
oh, but I liked her with that guy. And I was like, yeah, you liked them together because you saw one facet of a very specific type of relationship, and everyone else who watched that show did not like them. So I remember that. And I remember specifically like flashback episode. So I know like a very specific part of ER that was about 12 seasons or 13 seasons in. And so I've been doing more comfort shows lately just because that's what the way my brain's working. And I was like, well, ER is like long. There's lots of episodes, and I feel like I can do other stuff when I'm doing, when I'm watching it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I started watching it. The first episode is so long, but very good. And it's kind of fun to watch shows that are a little bit dirty.
Okay.
Like I
What do you
feel
mean by
like
dirty?
so like if you watch like Grey's Anatomy or even when I watch House, everything has to be like so clean and big and pristine. And
Hmm.
it's like, no,
Lots of
ER,
lights and everything.
yeah. And it's like, no, like that's not how the real world looks. And so like watching ER, it's very much like, yeah, this is probably what a Chicago hospital in the ER department looks like, where like
Hmm.
everyone's
I
running
hope not. I was
around
kind of
and
hoping that it would be clean in the hospital.
well, I mean, like clean, but like I don't know. It's just like and like actors aren't as like clean cut in these shows
Sure.
anymore. Like one of them I'm watching, and he's like prematurely bald, and I'm like, yeah, you don't really get to see that very much on
Hmm.
TV shows anymore. Like people have to be purposely bald or like not
Hmm.
bald at all. And so watching the show, I'm like, I just like that it's just a little bit rougher around the edges and we're not watching. And
Sure.
someone pointed this out on TikTok recently where they noticed that like two people who were acting had wrinkles in their forehead the entire time they were talking, where they would like furrow their
Okay.
brow. And they're like, yeah, everyone has Botox now. So you don't really get to see that very often in television anymore, where
Hmm.
like you get to see like not as pristine lighting and like a little bit like rougher around the edges. And I do agree with that. And I kind of like, I don't know, it's nice to go back and watch that and be like, wow, we had like something special when we actually paid actors to be on TV shows that lasted longer than 8 episodes a season. And it wasn't like the best production you've ever seen.
Sure.
And so I miss that.
I feel like maybe as we've gotten farther into like productions, we've kind of given a little less flexibility and maybe trust
Hmm.
to production companies and to also like the actors to portray themselves in a certain way or to, like write a certain way or
Yeah.
produce a certain set that they would maybe produce where there's a standard that people want to meet and
Yeah.
we're more concerned with will this make money? Is this
Right.
marketable? And
Hmm.
it has to look a certain way in order to do these things.
Yeah.
And it takes away some of the natural
Agreed.
factor of a show.
Yeah, and so I kind of like I've just been going into more like past production so I can watch it because I've been doing that with like Ugly Betty, which is a little bit more clean in certain
Hmm.
ways, but in other ways I'm like, well, Ugly Betty is like a little bit rough around the edges too with like what episodes happen where characters act. It's not always like actors are going from point A to B throughout a season. Sometimes they're like veering off into a wild episode where they have like one
Yeah.
motivation and then in the next episode they have a different motivation. I'm like, that also
Hmm.
tracks with like how humans act. Like I feel like
Yep.
we've become people where like we think everyone specifically is on a very specific journey and they're not allowed to change their mind or be
Hmm.
like impulsive or be like anything other than like what they were. And I think that that also does like I don't it detracts from society as a whole where we don't allow people to make mistakes as much anymore or like change their
Well, and I think there's
minds.
a lot of times if we're going down this road that if we're not recognizing people being allowed to grow, then it
Yeah.
really takes away from stories in
Right.
terms of like how we portray people.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just interesting to watch like an earlier show where they let people have more room to breathe. So I haven't watched
Yeah.
too much of it, but it has got me thinking a lot with what I've watched. But I've been reading a lot more lately.
Yeah.
I finished my last Mega May choice. It's
Okay.
June 23rd. I finished it on June 12th. But it's called The Book of Love by Kelly Link. I don't really know how I feel about this book. Like I'm of so many different minds because
Okay.
I really liked a lot of it. But then like it got really messy at the end and certain things I was like, are you sure you needed to have this?
Can I ask what it's
So,
about? Because I don't know anything about
yeah.
this book.
So I can tell you what it's about. So this book
Yes.
follows like a different group of characters and it starts with like this girl grieving the loss of her sister and someone who she was romantically involved with. They disappeared a year ago and no one knows what happened to them. And like we find out
Hmm.
that these three teenagers disappeared and no one knows what happened. And all of a sudden they're brought back to life by a music teacher who
Hmm.
seems to have some kind of like magical powers. And he informs them that like they're only alive in the form he's brought them back to, and two of them may be able to continue on with their lives after disappearing. And so he just like rewrites history and has no one remember the fact that they were gone. And
Oh,
then
I
they're
don't know how
like,
I feel about that.
I know, and they're supposed to be like put into this competition to see who will live and who will die.
Oh,
And it's like, it's a very, that's such, it
is
does
this a
not,
fantasy or
it's more like magical realism
okay?
because then you kind of find out like there are these like people with powers and like there are certain rules about their powers. And there's like this person who just kind of goes around like treating people like they're her playthings. And these like teenagers are dealing with the complications of like remembering that they died, but no one else did. And like it's it's not like really a competition book. It's very like ephemeral. And you're just like following these people in their lives as they're trying to figure
Kind
out
of like
what
Invisible Life
happened.
of Addie LaRue type feel.
Yes, very similar, but like a
Hmm.
little bit better written because I think the writing was
Yeah, I
really
was gonna
well
say if it's
done.
like that, I wouldn't vibe with it.
No, 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 no. The writing is really well done and it's very slow paced, but I don't know if I'd recommend reading it. Like,
Okay,
so
no,
this
I think
is,
that's fine.
yeah, this is a Pulitzer Prize finalist, so it's beautiful writing, but like, and I really liked the parts that I really liked. But part of me was like, I think this could have been 100 pages shorter and you could have made it an easier story. And you just tried to
Hmm.
shove so much into it that like the muchness overtook the parts of the novel I enjoyed, which was the
Sure.
writing and the characterization and the relationship between like two sisters who have a complicated relationship and like what it means to be powerful and what it means to like make a choice. Like, can you actively
Hmm.
decide not to participate in these types of competitions and things like that? And it was really great in parts, but then I think like overall, I'm like, yeah, I guess it's like a 3-star book because I didn't love it
Okay.
necessarily. So it's very strange.
Okay.
And I thought the ending was a little bit of a cheat. Like it just felt like people the author was like, well, I don't really know what to do, so I guess I just won't do anything. And I'm like, well, I would have
Hmm.
liked
I
if you
don't
had
like
made
that.
some decisions. Like,
Yeah, like please
um,
decide.
yeah, and so yeah, I read that and it was fine. I also read the fourth book in the Percy Jackson
That's
series,
my
The
favorite
Battle of the
one.
Labyrinth. I can see why it's your favorite. It was a ton of fun. I
Hmm.
really feel like uh I just feel like it's setting a good scene
Yeah.
for, the battles that are coming up. And I think it did
Hmm.
a good job with like building up on Percy's story and some of the complexities of like relationships with the gods and things like
Hmm.
that. And I really loved the storytelling of them in the labyrinth and like how time worked and
Yeah.
can you trust people or can you not trust people? And yeah, overall great time, enjoyed it so much.
I really like that one, I think specifically because I think we're dealing with like complicated relationships more where we have like Annabeth, who is this is her quest, and she is, kind of taking the reins, and it's something where Percy has to kind of give up a little control, and it's difficult for him when he's been kind of told all throughout, like, you're the most important person in the world.
Do you think Percy suffers a little bit from main character syndrome where I'm like, this would be so much
Absolutely.
interesting. Like in an adult novel, I would like to see him like treated like Rand was in book 3, where they're like,
Yep.
Percy can't be a part of this, and everyone's just going to show how useful they are without him.
Hmm.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously for like middle grade, they're not going to do that to
Yeah, they're not going to
10
do
and
that.
11
No.
year olds, but it would be interesting. And I think, you know, it's cool to see
Hmm.
how the story changes when different members are allowed to show their strengths.
Yeah.
And Annabeth in particular, I think, is a really cool character.
Hmm.
And I think it was neat to see how her skills played out in this particular book and how she kind of had to fight
Yeah.
within her own cohort to be
Hmm.
given some respect and some um, credit,
Yeah.
honestly, to be able to get them through this. And she follows through.
Yeah.
So,
And then I've read like 4 other books, but I will only mention one for right now.
okay.
I finished Mushroom Blues, #1 in the Hoffman
Yay.
Report by Adrian M. Gibson. Everyone go to that author interview if you want to hear more
Yes.
about the beginnings of the book. But this
Adrian's the
was
best.
Adrian is amazing, and I really, really liked this book. I thought he did a really good job of like layering in a very complicated protagonist who you do not always agree with
Yeah.
her actions or her decisions, but you can tell
Hmm.
she comes from, a lot of trauma and she's trying to deal with like different things and growing as a person while still having a little bit of problematic livelihood. I also really like how Adrian did world building with mushrooms. It's
Yeah.
so interesting to see how he did it, like how he played on certain things. Um, and like the culture of the people on this world. Um, I thought it was really well done. I thought it was really good world building and it was
This is
very fun to
Maokinoto. Is
read.
that what the world is that we're in?
Yes.
Okay.
I yes. And yeah, I thought it was a good mystery. Like it was deep enough.
Yeah.
I will say that there are so many character names, so that was a little bit of a struggle for me personally, but that is a
Hmm.
struggle I have with lots of names.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, and I love an alliterative name. It's Detective Henrietta Hoffman, who is a recovering alcoholic, who was, shifted to this world that she has a lot of uh, racist and ethnocentric beliefs that are not true, and her having to
Hmm.
learn and grow in this book was very interesting. And like seeing kind of a detective novel from the viewpoint of someone where you can understand has a lot of complex views of police officers and this type of work. I
Sure.
think it doesn't pull punches in that way. And so I thought it was really interesting and very funny. So overall, great book. Had a great time reading it. And yeah,
Yeah.
I've read so
Also, I
many
just
other
looked. It's
books, but
Neo Kanoko.
Neo
I, I
Kanoko, I
I was thinking it
apologize.
was Mayo Kanoto, but it's Neo Kanoko.
Okay. So sorry
I'm
about
thinking
that.
Mayo mycology.
Oh, good. Yeah, but I've just been reading a ton and having a good time. And one of the books I read the first 13 chapters out loud to my fiance, and that was Jim
Of
Butcher's
Grave
Grave Peril.
Peril.
We read
Woo!
this
A
on a
book.
trip home. It
A
is a
book.
book. This is a novel, and it's doing some of the best things that Laura pointed out, which is Jim Butcher discussing horror type elements.
Yep.
So yeah, I can't wait to dive into
Let's
this
do it.
book. Not quite about zombies yet.
Not
Ghosts.
yet. We got
Not yet.
ghosts. We got vampires. We're hitting a lot of things that I did not enjoy to read about. Because, listeners, if you're not aware by now, I'm not a big vampire werewolf girl. Whoops. I do not enjoy a vampire story.
I mean, but this is mostly ghosts. It's mostly spooky ghost stories.
So far,
So,
so
so
far,
far.
we'll get more vampires.
So Laura's read ahead. Um,
Yeah. So,
and
so yeah.
so this book opens in a
Well, can
very
I just say that the beginning of the audiobook starts with an intro from Jim Butcher, and he gives this
oh,
cute little thank you where he's like, "Thanks so much to James Marsters," who I believe I called James Marsden in the previous
I'm
episode.
sure
Apologies,
we
I cannot get
sometimes
this
call
man's
him
name right.
we
I
call him James Marsden very often, and
But you know
that
what? It's okay if I get his name wrong because he screwed up a lot of things in this audiobook recording, like chewing gum and sighing and belching probably. Who knows? He's probably cooking his dinner while he's recording these books. But Jim Butcher introduces the book, and I think this likely would have had to happen like many years after the book came out because he says he a note in this that after his thank you that yeah, like a lot of people, a lot of fans think that this is where the series starts to pick up and
oh
actually
good.
take off. And I'm like, interesting. So I was going into this hopeful, and then there's a moment that crushes my hope.
The smash cut into a chase scene where
No,
oh okay, another one.
we'll get there.
Okay, we'll get there. Well,
I
we
will not
opened
let this moment go.
okay, well we opened the book with Harry and his new BFF but old BFF Michael, someone we've never heard of before but who
Michael, who
definitely
I'm gonna just call it out right now. Michael is very religious, and I keep going, Hannah. I'll call it
yeah,
out in a second here.
so Harry's just kind of like Michael and I've been working for a long time together. We work
Hmm.
off and on. That's why I haven't mentioned him before. Pretty much that kind of
Okay.
energy. And so he and his BFF Michael um are racing down the streets of Chicago late at
In the
night
Beetle.
and they're
Yeah.
headed for Cook County Hospital. There are police cars. There is speeding. There is quipping where we find out that
And there's a
Harry
bunch of Michael saying, "Well, you better tell Susan you love her." And
I
Harry's like,
said
"I got her a Hallmark card. Doesn't that count?" I'm like, oh,
They
come
talk about
on.
how Harry is a fish with Susan, and they've been a
Mhm.
fish for a while. And also, he loves her, but he won't tell her because Harry Dresden is afraid of
Afraid of
commitment.
commitments. And
Um,
then Michael also brings up Elaine, and Harry's like, don't mention Elaine.
yes.
Okay.
And Michael is very religious, so he tells Harry they should not be having premarital sex, which they obviously are.
And this
And
is brought up so often.
so often.
It becomes annoying
Michael
to the
has a
point where I'm like,
fixation.
Michael, stop.
And of course, Michael is obviously a religious person who does not believe in family planning because they kind of talk
Hmm.
about how often his wife is knocked up pretty much. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Michael is a knight, we find out.
Yes, Michael is a knight and he has a sword called Amarachius
Hmm.
that he carries around in a duffel bag because that isn't suspect at all. A giant duffel
No.
bag with
Right
a
off
knife
the
in it.
beginning, I was like, do we trust Michael even though he's worked with Dresden for a long time? Because he's annoying and I don't know that we trust him.
I don't
But
know, but
okay, but
he
apparently,
knows that Dresden loves Susan, and that's the
yeah.
important part. So they get to Cook County Hospital and they ask for the nursery.
Oh,
And then
creepy.
they go
Babies are
upstairs
creepy.
and it's really creepy. All the nurses are asleep. Michael gets out his sword out of his duffel bag.
And they hear someone singing.
And there's a ghost in the maternity
And you know who it
ward.
was? It was Agatha
Agatha
all
Hagglethorne.
along.
Oh, thank you. I just love that
I
her name
couldn't
is
let it go.
Agatha Hagglethorne, which I don't
Oh,
think
what a
is a real
terrible
last
name.
name. And she is endangering the lives of the babies in there.
And the nurses.
She is about to suffocate one when Harry comes in, and Harry
And
does what he
Harry is a sucker for a damsel in distress. He has a streak of chivalry a mile wide.
And so instead of just killing a ghost who he knows is not a real person at this point, he has to
Lets her
reason
go.
with her because he's a chivalrous guy. And so Harry does what Harry does with all people, which is just openly saying things to their face that he thinks they
That
need
are
to hear.
harmful. Like,
And
I know
he's
your husband beat you and you killed your child, but you're not in reality.
but
Okay,
also
that seems helpful.
they didn't beat you and didn't kill your child because you're not real. The real Agatha no longer exists and you're just a reflection of her. Could you imagine if I
No.
like walked up to someone and I'm like, you're not real? That's not okay. A ghost is going to be in distress if they hear that. Harry, you're
Anyone
not being
would
chivalrous.
like,
Like,
yeah,
and we
as
find
far
out
as your streak of chivalry a mile wide, debatable.
and so they find out that the real Agatha trigger warnings for lots of just bad stuff. It's a
Yeah.
Dresden novel. I expect not handheld into very specific subjects. So, like Laura said, Agatha's husband was abusive. She was trying to keep her baby quiet from him, and she she smothered the child and then
Hmm.
she gave her husband 40 whacks, as Harry said, with an axe, and
Hmm.
she also cut off her own hand. Shockingly, Agatha does not take someone screaming in her face that she is not real well.
Yeah, who would have
And
thought?
Harry and Michael have to fight her, and they think they pushed her into the Never Never, but she is still too close to the surface. The babies are still endangered, and they have
Hmm.
to follow her into the Never Never.
Can I also
Um,
mention a couple things about this? So when you mentioned the horror, like a lot of this is very creepy
yes.
in this scene particularly, but like in the moment where Agatha is coming to like all these realizations, there's a moment where she raises her arm up and it's referred to as being a stump, which I don't like,
No,
but it it's implied that she used that hand to commit the act that killed her child,
which is
and
why
which is
she used
why
violence
she
against herself. Yes.
chopped it off herself. And it's very creepy to read all of this, honestly. And then the babies are crying, and another baby whose full name is given, Allison Ann Summers. I don't know why this baby's full name is given unless it's going to become a character longer term. Like that seems weird to include that name.
Yeah.
But she is then possessed by Agatha, and then they realize, oh, we're gonna have to open up a window to Never Never because we didn't totally get rid of her.
Yeah.
And Michael makes a comment, like a religious comment, like we have to save them in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, or something like that. And then Harry goes on this weird like rant about Michael, about how he's such a great guy and he made me soul gaze with him when we first met, and he's so pure that it almost made me weep. I'm like, I just don't like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff. Well, and so we're going into this, like she's going into the Never Never. They're trying to like fight her with ghost dust that is like more real when you put it
Mm-hmm.
onto a ghost and it like keeps them in
It made me
reality so
laugh
you
that
can
it's
kill
just
them.
called ghost dust.
But then we have like a very Harry Dresden moment where we smash cut to hours before this all
Which
happened.
my first comment on that, you thought I was gonna hate this. My first comment on that chapter was, okay, I dig the flashback thing.
Oh, good. And so he's talking to Susan. They're getting ready for dinner
He's
tonight. She's
talking
asked,
about his apartment, first of all, like reintroducing us to the scene and reads some of the titles of his books, which are very hilarious. And
I
he
know it's
mentions
his
that maybe he
office.
wrote some.
It's his office, and his office it says Harry Dresden Wizard, Magic and You, Why Witches Don't Sink Any Faster Than Anyone Else, a Wizard's Perspective. And he does write them all to like make people feel
That's
like he's
amazing.
a wizard. And so he and Susan are chit-chatting. She's like, can I get an exclusive on someone who's hunting ghosts? And it's like, oh, maybe they're hunting ghosts. I don't know.
She's really good at her job, though. We know that.
And she's
He
gotten
says it many times.
syndicated. She's been syndicated, Laura. And
Okay.
so he is getting ready to close up shop for the night. And a woman comes in and she's like, I need your help. And he's like, well, I'm a sucker for damsels. So she's going to have to come inside and I'll hear all about it. And so here is a moment where I was reading this out loud to my fiance. He has listened to all of these books.
Mhm.
And he was like, I was like, Harry just like, I don't love that in this story, everyone throws themselves at Harry. It's
Why don't
so
you love that?
strange. It's just not fun to read. And he's like,
It's
well,
you mean it's not possible? Like that's
and
one of the greatest fantasies of this series.
And so she like comes in, she's kind of like Harry's like, she's hitting on me. She like opens her legs for me.
She's a
And
tiny little woman, and
she has
she,
asphalt colored hair. He says
yeah,
that
it's dark hair,
twice.
still hot. But the
Asphalt
thing that
colored.
we need to mention here is when right away when she sat down, he noticed her young, firm breasts and their tips and her nipple erection on command.
Uh-huh.
However, Dresden had seen acts much better. My note says, I could slap him.
So at this point,
And then
my
I'm concerned
fiance
with, I'm like, this is
said,
where this book takes off.
so my fiance said, you know, what you're supposed to think is Harry's an unreliable narrator and he often thinks people are in love with him when they aren't. And then she immediately propositions him for sex. And my fiance said, that's a bad example.
Yeah, it is a bad example because after I had just heard from Jim Butcher, this is really where the series starts to take off and go in a different direction.
Laura, I
And then
always
we hear
think,
about her nipple erection on command.
Laura, I think all stories should start off with a nipple erection on command. And I'm concerned that you feel differently. But
Oh,
anyway,
I wasn't expecting that response.
he says no thank you to the sex kitten, who then accuses
Okay.
him of being gay, and he has to have
Of
a
being
no
gay. And he says,
homo
no
moment.
homo. I just
And
don't want an STD.
yeah, he goes, Hell's bells. Haven't you ever heard of AIDS, herpes? Like immediately offering sex
What
equals
is
you're not
wrong
using
with
protection.
him?
And so then she
This is
says,
not a good example.
I need protection. And she gives him a fake name, Lydia.
Mm-hmm.
And she says that someone's after.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, and then Dresden also has this internal monologue about how he can tell that she's been through a lot and that she's probably used her body for other things, which makes me sad. And I'm like, what is your deal
there's
with
also a
sex
play on
workers?
word where he goes down Quixote instead of down
Oh,
Quixote.
gosh.
Oh, and
He
so
often pities sex workers, and I just there seems to be a little bit of a fixation on this, almost along the lines of the no homo and nipple
this
erection
is a
things
very
too.
specific time period where like everyone wanted to save a sex worker, where it was like, well, sex workers never want that job and they don't have, independence or authority in their own work life. They are victims of their own
Hmm.
job. And it's just like it's not fully accurate.
Yeah,
And yeah. And so
but
we
it
find
gets
out,
annoying when you constantly hear it.
especially from like a guy who just tells you how chivalrous he is all the time.
He's got chivalry a mile wide.
And so we find out that she has like this prophetic condition where she can see into the future, but it's kind of like seizures, so no one believes
Which did you
you.
think the name of it was weird?
Cassandra's tears.
Yeah, like why that? Like why is
I don't
that what
know.
it's called? And then he's like, it's often mistaken for epilepsy. Like, okay.
And so she has it. And so people are after her, and she sees dark things, a dark war. She sees death coming for her out of
And
the
of course,
spirit
Dresden.
world. And she sees him in the middle of it all. And he goes, that's your vision? Iowa has less
Iowa
corn.
has more corn,
Has less
or
corn.
has less corn. That
And
made me laugh.
he is like, you're just flattering me. I don't believe in this. And then he's such a chivalrous guy. He tells her to go stay at a church because ghosts can't get to her
Well,
there.
this is after he's noticed that she has possibly injured herself
Oh,
due
yeah.
to mental illness.
And he says that people with Cassandra's tears condition often are self-harming individuals because no one believes them and it's
Hmm.
depressing and all these things. And so he gives her his strongest talisman because he's such a sucker, and he
What a great guy.
sends her on her way. And then he goes again to leave. And oh, he also gets a note from Bob, the pervert.
Hmm.
And Bob tells him all about Agatha Hagglethorne. And then he's leaving the door, and Michael comes in, and he's like, Michael, how did you know to come talk to me? And Michael's like, the Lord sent me. Nah, I'm just kidding. I've seen you every night. Why are you asking this question?
Can I just like say I've like got a little bit of a prediction because there's often comments made about Michael like having an angelic look to him and everything with the cape. I'm like,
Yeah.
are we gonna find out that this is Michael the Archangel?
I
Like,
mean,
is that what this is
I
implying?
so in my notes, I said Michael, kind of like the archangel.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking, especially with like
I
the
don't know,
sword and
because
the protective
but
thing. Like,
Michael has a wife and she is pregnant, Laura. So have you
okay,
considered he's not an angel? He's just a
a,
stand-up
a
guy.
guy with a streak of chivalry a mile wide.
Yeah, a good guy. Michael, you just gotta listen to Dresden
Michael,
more.
you're a good guy, but you're not as good as me, Harry Dresden.
So anyway, they drop into the Never Never, and this part annoys me so much because Harry, when he goes there, is like, I only have 5 minutes until my godmother finds me. And then the godmother finds him within 5 minutes, which he had
Boom.
just promised us. And then he goes, how did she find me this fast? I'm like, it seems like you knew that this was a
It
danger.
seems like this was an issue.
It seems like we all knew she was going to find you within
Hmm.
5 minutes. You told us she would. So
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
they come across Agatha like immediately, and she's
yes.
like very emotional and everything. And then Harry's like, "Uh-oh, look, there's hellhounds." And Michael's like, "I told you not to call them that." And so he's like, "My
Oh, yeah.
bad,
No,
heckhounds." And I'm
no,
like,
no,
"Well, I
no.
hate that."
No. It wasn't that. He goes, holy, he goes, look, hellhounds. And he goes, I told you not to call them that. And he's, oh no, he goes, holy shit, I breathed, hellhounds. And and Michael says sternly, I hate it when you swear. And he goes, you're right, sorry. Holy shit, heckhounds. So the joke isn't
That he still
that
curses and he
he's,
calls them heckhounds, but I still hated it.
oh, okay. Well, I was going to say, like, there is like some things, it was the shit he had a problem with, not the hellhounds. He said, I don't like
Yeah,
when you
I understand.
swear.
I just still had a problem with the joke.
That's fine. But they do take Agatha down. She it's a very weird situation where they're like on old-timey Chicago streets because it's what like
Everything's made of
Agatha
wood and
has
stuff
around
too.
her.
And he's like, okay, no wonder everything burned down in Chicago. Like, okay,
And so
what?
they also see that like she has these weird like barbed wire imprints in herself, like she's being
Hmm.
like trapped by this barbed wire. And Michael's like, why don't we see that in the real world? And he's like, well, things are different and never you can be tethered in different ways. So that must be what was upsetting her and what brought her out. And so there's an
It's
even
almost like
deeper
the upside
mystery
down from
here.
Stranger Things.
Exactly. And so they do get rid of Agatha. And then there is Harry's godmother, who we find out is like this
Leah.
fae who Harry was once like promised his soul to either by his mother or
By his
by
mom,
him.
and also he did when he was underage, because then she kind of is like, oh, I own you. And he's like,
Hmm.
don't make a deal with a minor. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
And so she's kind of saying, like, you have to come with me. You want to come with me into this area. You are mine. You've been promised to
Hmm.
me. And Harry's like, fine, I'll come to you as long as my friend can leave. And then
And then they both go back through the
they both
rift.
go out through the rift. And
And
she,
Michael's like, you shouldn't have lied, Harry. I'm not really okay with you lying about that. I'm like, Michael, get over it.
yeah, Michael, come on. Like, you can be religious and not approve of lying, but Harry also was like, one day maybe. Like, he kind of worded his like words
Yeah.
specifically. Also, this part made me laugh because he goes, come on, there's no time. godmother yells out treachery, which I think people should do more in their real
Yell
life.
out treachery.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start yelling it out just at work.
Right. Like if someone does something that's mildly inconveniencing, I want to scream out treachery and just point my finger at them.
Actually, I changed my mind. I'd like to use a credit card instead of paying cash. Could you give me all that back?
Treachery! Exactly. And so they jump through, the nurses are around, and they get arrested. So
Yep.
they go to
And then
jail.
Harry gets a little bit mad, and he's like, "This stinks that we're in here because we're better than the cops." Okay.
And Harry's just indignant at all times. And they're talking about like if they make bail, and then they get bailed out by Michael's wife, Charity,
Charity.
who is just a million months pregnant, and she hates Dresden. And she's like, my husband only gets in trouble when you're around, Dresden. And Harry's like, I'm hurt. I'm just a good guy.
I'm
And
chivalrous.
and she doesn't like him and he doesn't know why. So he leaves and he runs into Susan and
Yep,
they
and she
go
looks hot.
and they go back and she's wearing like a mini skirt with no underwear, which is not how mini skirts work, guys, just so you know.
What do you mean?
Uh, you shouldn't have no
What?
underwear on with a mini skirt.
What?
Uh
She planned it because they were meeting up, right? Isn't that what he said?
and
It's all planned.
they
And then he says, "I love you" in an extremely awkward way.
but he doesn't really, he breaks off, he can't really say it.
Yeah.
And she's like, you don't have to say it because I'm 24 and I don't know my own worth.
She's like, I know that I've been begging for you to commit, but now that you were maybe going to do it, I changed my mind. You're not ready. Okay. And Mister's missing, which made me
Mr.
sad.
starts missing, and then all of a sudden there are vampires there.
Yep.
And Harry's like, give me your keys, there are vampires.
And he's like, don't let them lick you, Susan. To which I'm like, ew, why are they licking people?
Because their licks are narcotic.
I don't like that. Just bite like normal vampires.
And they talk about how one of them is on a diet because even vampires aren't safe from the crushing indignity of diet culture. And
I mean, on What We Do in the Shadows, they do have to have that workout class. They
that
go to
is
the gym often. So
that is true.
you know what? That's my favorite vampire story because it makes fun of vampires constantly.
I freaking love that show so much. Someone was watching it at a restaurant I was at recently, and it was the episode where you find out like Yef's backstory. I was like, gosh, this show is so amazing. And so Harry has been invited to an event with the vampire court. And
yeah, it's like a ceremony at midnight for Bianca.
And he's being invited as a local representative of the White Council of Wizards, which like the White Council hates claiming Harry, so why would he be invited? And Susan's like, what is this White Council? What if you brought me? And
this is so annoying though, because she like guesses what the White Council is immediately, and he has a moment where he's like, wow, I can't believe she guessed that. Wow, she's just like so smart.
Again, these are 24-year-olds, Laura, and I feel like you're not giving them enough credit for being dipshits.
I am giving them credit. This is me giving him credit. I'm like, stop.
And so he's like, we can't go. We'd be putting ourselves in danger. And she's like, but what if I wanted to put myself in danger? And he's like,
I want to improve my career because look what the Loop Guru did for me.
Oh yeah,
I was on CNN.
She said, "Look what the werewolf story did," and he's like,
and then he goes, "Loop Guru, damn you, Susan! This is why I can't commit." And then you don't take my job seriously.
And then they have a little sexy sex on a rug by the fireplace because
it was planned.
Also, here in this section,
why does he leave fires running at his house when he's gone?
Because he literally doesn't have any heat, and so if it's cold out,
so it's safe to leave a fire going.
I mean, he probably magics it, so it's not.
I suppose, but
he is a wizard, Laura.
But still, he's complaining about fires everywhere in Chicago.
Goes, fuego, 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 and it knows what to do.
And then he's like, "Oh, like my apartment is decorated in texture." Like, okay.
I hate the fact that he always talks about how much texture he has, and he's like, "I hang tapestries on the wall," and I'm like, "That is not texture. That's just a really weird guy who you think his apartment smells of weed.
It
Like,
makes me think he's got that like carpet that my great grandparents had that was like really thick and
mhm.
like orange and green and brown
Oh yeah,
and like
texture.
yeah. But like when I
uh
associate it with a 24-year-old, I'm like, yeah, this is not cool. You just got this somewhere out of the dumpster, probably.
and also he talks about this and he talks about how he can't have electricity anywhere in the apartment.
No.
I feel
And
like
he's
it's
got an
grown.
ice box with just actual ice in it.
So that's the thing. I feel like his like adversity to electricity has grown in this book to the
Yes.
point of like insanity, where
Where it's
he
like
at one point
Mayberry.
says he doesn't have heated water,
Mm-mm.
which technically shouldn't be a problem.
No.
Like, how is that a problem with like electricity and things
Well, I
if you have
guess
like a
a
water
hot
heater in the
water
basement?
heater would be hooked up to
Maybe.
electricity, right?
But I feel
They
like it wouldn't
they
affect like
often are electrical,
yeah,
right?
but I feel like it wouldn't be in his apartment. Like, wouldn't that affect the entire
The
apartment
entire
building?
building.
Yeah, like it wouldn't just be a Harry
But we've
Dresden
learned that this
issue.
is not a regular studio apartment. This
Yeah,
is a house.
this is a house. I don't know. It's very strange when I read that. And I was like, I feel like the water heater wouldn't be as affected as he's saying that it is, but
It's
sure.
there's a lot of workarounds for things.
But anyway, he gets to have sexy sex time with Susan. And then he has a nightmare where
Mhm.
his godmother is coming to him
And
and
it's very
she's
sexual too,
and
which
he's
I
supposed to be
don't like.
underage, which I
Yeah.
hated.
And he's
Um,
chained up too, where I'm like, I don't know if I like that.
and then all of a sudden the dream changes and suddenly there's fire and
Yeah, and Justin's there with
Justin, which
flesh
will
peeling off of him.
I'm sorry, it will never not be funny that the main memory
Justin.
antagonist is named
Like it's
Justin.
very tragic and creepy that that is happening, and you're just like, Justin.
And he's like, Justin. And I'm like, well, I can't take it seriously now. You said his name out loud.
Oh.
And then he comes out of his dream. His body is aching all over from just being tired.
And all the
And then
sex.
all of a sudden, someone is trying to break down the door.
It's
And
Michael because he's there to give Harry a talking to about sex before marriage.
well, and Susie has to like go running into Harry's bedroom and like
I'm
they
confused by this though because it's like she instantly falls asleep too because Dresden like looks in and Mr. and Susan are in there like sleeping and he's like, Mr. You lucky bastard, I wish I could be curled up next to her. And I'm like, how did you fall asleep so quick?
well, because it probably was really early in the morning. I too would fall asleep that fast if someone
I
woke me up from a
guess.
carpet where I wasn't sleeping that
I
well.
guess I don't go back to sleep that quickly.
But anyway, Michael's like, "Did you use my name at a place recently?" And Harry's like, "Oh yeah, that one girl who was trying to sleep
Yeah,
with me last
Lydia.
night."
I told her to go to meet Father Forthill
And
at
Michael's
St.
like, "Well,
Mary's.
we have a problem. We need to go." And so then we get a little bit of a history of Wicker Park as they go over there, which is actually seemed relatively accurate,
Was
which
that
was
accurate?
shocking to
Okay.
me.
Because he mentions like St. Mary's like takes up a whole block and it was like,
I
oh,
don't know if it's like a whole block for like churches, but like he's not wrong about the energy of Wicker Park, and there are bigger
Mhm.
buildings in that area, so it wouldn't shock
I-
me if that happened.
yeah.
Uh,
And
but
it does seem like a lot of the buildings are older too.
yeah, and like the history of like people moving in and gentrification and like
You're
going
gonna
into
laugh when I
more
say this, but Wicker Park has like such a Sesame Street vibe.
like when you visit it, it has a Sesame Street vibe.
Yes,
That's
it
fair.
reminds me of Sesame Street.
You know, that's fair. I mean, Sesame Street is supposed to be on a city block. Like it's supposed to be
I
a street that is a
I don't
city,
know
so you're not
why I think
wrong.
of that. I'm like, wow, this is a lot like Sesame Street.
Well, because it's a lot of like houses lined up with like bigger
Hmm.
staircases. Because for
Yeah.
people who don't know, like a lot of houses they lowered the streets of Chicago. So a lot
Hmm.
of houses are like up higher than you would expect houses to be. You don't just walk straight into them for
Hmm.
when they had lowered the roads. Um,
And so
or
this
was it raised the
like the
roads? I
looks of
forget,
the
but
buildings though are similar too. Even like the businesses are kind of like that. And I'm like,
that's
wow,
fair.
where's Oscar?
I used to live in Wicker Park, so I do love that. But there was a ghost who tried to break into the church last night when Lydia
Hmm.
was there. She has already left because she was scared.
Yeah, and the
And
priest is like, I think the only thing saving us was God. And Dresden's like, I respect that.
yeah, he does respect religion. And he also talks about how Charity hates him. Um,
Charity.
and they also shame Lydia for like he's like, maybe she has visions. And they're like, maybe she's a junkie. And it's like,
That
okay.
made me mad too.
I know. And so I'm like, you guys should believe in a higher power and things that are unexplained, especially when
Because you
like,
know what? If somebody explained some of these things that Harry Dresden's doing to just some random person, would they also be like, wow, this guy sounds like a junkie?
right. And
He's out here screaming about loop gurus and stuff. Like, okay, yeah.
well, and I'm sorry, like a ghost literally tried to break into the building. You think you might believe that this woman has
Yeah.
powers that are unexplained? Um, and so they talk about how God finds a way and they're trying to figure out what to do. And oh, we also have a moment where Michael's like, I do not approve of you working with Bob. And Harry is like, I don't know what else to do. I pay Bob. He is
He's
a
not,
an
he's like, I don't like
employee.
your familiar. And he's like, he's not a familiar. I pay him. You pay
And-
him? In romance novels
Yep.
mostly. Okay.
And so, so much fun.
Bob
Uh
reads Bridgerton,
Bob meets Bridgerton.
and it's full
Uh,
circle.
and then they decide that they have to go talk to a psychic, correct?
Well, he's a necromancer,
Oh, he's a
but
necromancer. That's
he
it.
lost his powers, so basically now he just does kind of like cheap psychic stuff for
And
people
he
in the
lost his
community where he's
power.
like helping people talk to deceased loved ones.
Yeah, and he's pretty much a con artist.
Yeah.
And he lost his powers by like not trying to work hard enough at them. Where
Hmm.
Harry's like, if you had worked harder, you could have been a
Which
good
I
guy.
hate that.
I know.
And also Morty's just like very jaded and he doesn't really want to work with Dresden at all, like cooperate with him. But at the same time, Dresden's kind of being a jerk. And why would you want to just like give up answers to this guy? Because he's pushing hard and then also
Well,
like making these accusations like that, like should have done this and should have done that, Morty.
and
Okay.
like Morty also is trying to like catch a cab because it seems like he's
Hmm.
running away from something. And Harry's just like, well, you're not answering my questions and da 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 da. And Morty is just like, look, I have to go. Some stuff's been happening. It's been weird around here, and I'm not
Hmm.
sticking around for it because it's about to
And
get bad.
And basically, he kind of reveals that like the barrier between the spirit world and the real world is kind of breaking down. And
Yep.
that's what the main problem is. And so then Dresden is like, you know what, Morty? You just lay low and relax, and your powers will come back. I'm like, wow, I've had many doctors say the same thing to me about having a kid. So
Full
Dresden
circle.
also works in gynecology.
Harry's just that kind of guy. He's
He
chivalrous,
is
Laura.
so well rounded.
And so Morty runs away because he's scared. Dresden kind of like goes into his office and looks at all the different
Hmm.
things and notes. And they talk about how there's, oh, and they do, when they're talking, they have like bigger, badder ghosts are coming, super
Hmm.
ghosts. And so when he goes to leave, there is an unmarked car with two nondescript males inside. And we find out that they're detectives,
Hmm.
one who hates him and one who's nice, because that is usually what happens. Um,
One who hates him and one who's nice.
Well, it's like Rudolph nodded back, not even trying to hide his glower. He didn't
He like
like me.
called him Rudy once, and then he goes to Rudolph, and I was like, "Why the formal name again?" Okay.
I don't know. And so we also have John Stallings, who's
Hmm.
pretty nice to Harry. And they're like, we're here because Murph sent for you. There's something going on that we need your help
Mickey.
with.
We get our reintroduction to Karen about how she's saved the city of Chicago, and she's the only
So many
reason that
times.
Chicago is standing.
Well,
And then we
okay.
get like an introduction to Mickey, who, what's his
Mickey
last name?
Malone.
Malone. Yeah,
Mickey Malone. Lots of
we
alliteration.
have to have the alliteration.
So Mickey Malone is a police detective who is in trouble. And this part confused me a little because like Mickey Malone owned a nice house. His wife taught elementary school, and I was like, a police officer and a school teacher have a nice house. What are we? Where are
How?
they working?
A police officer? Absolutely. A police officer in Chicago absolutely would have a nice house.
That's fair, but I thought it
They're
was
paid a
weird to be
ton.
like, she's an elementary school teacher. I just thought it was
No, she
weird
wouldn't
to
have a
like
nice house,
mention
but
that with that. Like it didn't seem like that went
yeah.
together. Um, but they go
But
to their
together they probably
house
have a nice place.
because Mickey is in trouble and Mrs. Malone has to come to the door and invite Harry in because
Can I
if
just
she
mention before this that they're like walking and Dresden finds a dead cat and he's like
Oh
sad.
yeah.
And then he's
Oh
like keeps finding these dead animals, which was
yes.
creepy. But also I just have a note here. I'm like, I kind of like that he's a cat person. Like That
I do like that Harry's a
kind of
cat
is a neat
person.
detail.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he arrives at the house and he knows something weird is going on because he senses
Hmm.
something and he finds this dead cat. And then there are all these other dead animals in the
Yep.
area. And everyone's really creeped out by this because it is unsettling. Like it is very
Yes.
horror movie-esque to like come to this house where you know
Hmm.
something is going on. And then there seems to be even more. And
Yes.
so Harry admits that like you have to be invited into someone's home or
Hmm.
else you aren't working with all of your powers. They're inhibited in certain ways. So she has
But
to
there are
come.
loopholes
Hmm.
because they're like, "Oh, were you able to get into so and so's house in the last
And
book?"
he was
And
like,
he's like,
they were dead.
"Because they were dead, so I can do."
Or they were out of their mind and then I
Yeah,
would be able to get in. And so
like of course there got to be some loopholes,
it's mostly like I know Mickey Malone and I care, so I'm gonna have him
right?
invite me in. Um, and so he goes in, they're kind of talking about all the issues with the ghosts and how all the detectives are scared of him after the loop
Hmm.
guru in the last book, which was like a year ago, pretty much. And the school teacher, his wife, Mickey's wife, is like, I really appreciate you, and he really looks up to you, and I know you're gonna help. And then he talks to Murph, and he realizes everyone's really scared of what's going on, and he
Hmm.
goes in to the area with Mickey, and Mickey is. I'm pretty sure he's just possessed, is what it feels like. Like he's
This
changed
has
the
very
bed,
much like an
exorcist.
exorcism
Yeah.
vibe to it. Like he's cuffed to the bed and he's doing really creepy things. It very
Yes.
much feels like an exorcism because they're like, "Don't touch him, don't do this." Blah, blah, blah.
He's
Everyone
making
around him is
strange
scared.
noises. And so then Harry opens up his third eye and he sees that Mickey is covered in similar barbed wire to what the
Hmm.
ghost was covered in. And he decides to try to fight it off of him. He touches it and it like almost tries to connect itself to Harry.
Yeah, it's almost like a
Um,
serpent like thing, which okay, religious.
yeah. And he's trying to get it off, trying to do whatever he can. And then Murph comes in, and because he has his third eye open, he
You
sees
can
the
see her for how she
glory.
truly is.
And she
Because
is
she's
a
got a
golden
golden,
warrior, a
yeah, and a
golden
sword.
aura. Yeah. And so she comes in and she's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "Open the window." And he throws out the barbed wire and lights it on fire with
Hmm.
his favorite. It's like Harry Potter with his like what was the one that he always used? And everyone's like,
Expecto Patronum.
yeah, expecto. No, he uses expelliarmus every time,
Oh
and like,
yeah.
and then in the seventh book, they're like, so they made all these doppelgangers of him, and then they're like, yeah, they knew it was you because you used the spell
It's
you
the
always
same
use.
spell you always use.
This is the only one Harry Potter knows.
He knows
And
Expecto
so
Patronum.
he does know expecto patronum.
But those are like the only two.
But Harry always uses fuego, and he gets it out. He burns it to pieces, and
Hmm.
then Mickey's fine.
Yeah.
And
He's cool.
they get his wife, Sonia, and he's like, he's gonna need a lot of rest, Murph. And there's something going on. And Murph, I hate this in books where like Harry looked at Murph like, "Oh my gosh, you have a golden aura." And later
Mhm.
she goes, "You looked at me strange. What did you see?" And I'm like, "No one knows that. Like when you're in
Yeah.
crisis, if you were looking at me strangely in a crisis, I would think like, we're in a crisis. Laura's just looking at me strangely. Like
Yeah.
I don't understand people who have the wherewithal to be like, that doesn't make sense. Could you tell me? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that wouldn't happen. And so he's kind of like, what's going on? This has bigger ramifications if this barbed wire came into the world with Mickey. And he's like, I had to find out what's going on and who created this. And then he goes, unless
Unless it
Harry,
finds me
it
first.
they find me first. And that is the first 13 chapters of this book. Uh there's a vampire ball coming up, Laura.
Not looking forward to that. I
um
will say though that there's like a lot of this writing in this first part that is like almost psychedelic in nature, and he
yeah,
kind of likes to tie in like religion and drugs and other worlds and the afterlife, which I think is cool. Like I
I
kind of
do like
appreciate
that.
it.
I I'm enjoying this book so far. I think
Same.
it does have like a little bit more, it has a little bit better cohesiveness. I could see where he's like, well,
Sure.
this is the one where it feels like it's popping up, where I'm like,
Like
well,
a turning point for the series. Yeah.
it feels like everything has better like plotted outness than the other two, which felt like
Hmm.
we were like, oh, this thing's happening, and then this thing's happening, and then this thing's happening. And I'm like, okay, all the stories being interconnected in this book actually makes sense. Where the last
Yes.
two, I was like, what's going on and why are these connected? So
This
I
feels like to me like he's starting to kind of come into his writing a little more and
yes.
into the series, like starting to be like, you know what, I feel a little more comfortable. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna start flexing my writing chops here a little bit, but
Yeah.
at the same time, he still doesn't have any female beta readers,
Nope.
so he still not quite turning that corner for me. But
Nope.
I do
Well,
think that the writing and the plot, like you said, is definitely flowing better.
it is. So I really appreciate that.
And I
Yeah.
really just again am falling back on like he needs to write like a Stephen King style horror.
Yeah. I do. I would be interested
That
to
would be
see.
excellent.
Well, we did have some listener notes saying like these are technically supposed to be fantasy horror almost. So I do think that we
I
are
guess
picking up on those
maybe it's
vibes,
just like
but
the jokes and stuff of it all
mhm.
that take me out of this and make me think that it's not true
Well,
horror.
I also know that like how much horror have you read outside Stephen King?
Not a ton, but usually
Yeah.
if I do, it's like novellas that are pretty dark.
Yeah.
So,
And so I do think that there is a flavor. Like I read recently I read I talked about it on the podcast, The Dead Take the A Train, which I would
yep.
say is horror, but it also has a lot of quippiness, a la like
Hmm.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I didn't talk about this book this week, but I've been reading the Indian Lake trilogy, books 1 and 2 so far. And that one is Stephen Graham Jones. And that is very
Yeah.
like meta, and they're like making jokes and they're discussing like slasher films with the horror elements to it. And so I do think that this would qualify as horror as someone who's
Okay.
like, I've been dipping my toe more and more into horror as I like
Sure.
grow as a reader. I've been finding out that I think I like horror a lot more than I thought I ever did.
Sure.
Yes, Laura and I did a recent writing fun thing together, and the what I sent you was definitely horror elements to it.
Hmm.
And so I think I'm playing with that genre a little bit more. So I do think that this has horror elements to it. I think there is the quippiness of like fun, a different type of horror film. So
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, I just like Googled like popular horror novels and I've read like Ring Shout and a couple of other ones
Yeah.
that are popping up here that I'm like, okay, yeah. But Jim Butcher does pop up when
Yeah.
you just search popular horror novels. But yeah, I think that a lot of times as a reader, we want to classify things a certain way based on previous books that we've read that we really feel define the genre. And maybe it's just that the fun of this takes me out of thinking it's a horror
That's
genre.
fair. But I do think that there are definitely
But
like lots of horror
I am,
elements.
yes, absolutely tons of horror elements.
Yeah. So overall, having a good time, guys. Can't wait to read more because this is a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Um, but if you want to continue reading on with us, make sure you're keeping an eye out for some of our next reads up on our pod, owwrpod.com. I recently revamped our reading schedule, so we
Yeah, it
have
looks great.
a lot of what's coming up. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for that because we have some great things coming down the line, and you can prepare with reading some of the stuff that we're going to be
Or
diving into.
watching because we're doing some
Or
TV
we got
Tuesdays.
some great TV Tuesdays coming up, including this next month. We have a great episode with Namina Forna that we recently recorded
Yeah,
for
on
Blue
Blue
Eye
Eyes
Samurai.
Samurai.
And I can't wait for that episode to come out. And,
Great discussion.
great discussion. We love Namina. I want her on like every month. So,
And welcome to On Wednesdays Reread.
yeah,
I'm Hannah. I'm Namina.
or Laura and Namina, whoever she wants to talk to more that
I'm being
week.
replaced.
No, never. Or you guys should follow us on our Discord, our Pod Discord, or at Twitter, Instagram, all the places at
All the
OWWR Pod.
places.
And if you would be so willing, tell a friend about us or
Yeah,
rate,
please
review, and
share. That really
subscribe.
helps.
It does help. Or, join our Patreon if you're able to. We have $1 tier, $3 tier, $5 tier, and $10 tier where we do bonus content for you. So
Yeah, we'd really appreciate the support no matter what you do, if it's helping us out on Patreon or just telling a
telling
friend.
a friend. Yeah. And so just to know, we appreciate you always as you continue
And
on
thanks
with
for
us
listening.
in the year of the Dresden. Bye.
Bye.